Okay, welcome to Workshop Wednesday. Thanks everyone for being here. Looks like a lot of people are filing in right now, so we'll go ahead and tackle this first question. We are working to utilize the program better. I'm completely new. Second user is fairly new to the program as well. How can we work on setting everything up to our liking without affecting the current staff person working on active transactions prior to transitioning the role to me and my email? Okay, sure. So thing you're probably going to want to do, and anyone that's new in here, go ahead and post your questions up in the Q&A section. We won't be monitoring the chat, but we will be looking at the Q&A. So what you're going to want to do is add a second user. And in that second user, you can go down to the organization here in users, or you can come up to the top here where this little icon of a person is in the top right and hit organization. This gear icon down on the bottom left is where it was, second one down, or you can hit Control O, I believe it is. So Control O, and that'll take you over here too. So you can add a new user here. Make sure if you're adding a team member that's going to be a paid user, it would be under team member. If you're adding an agent portal, which is free, it's an agent portal user. Go ahead and set this up however you like. And then once you have the team members in here, you're going to be able to work in a totally separate account from the other person. So you have different visibility. You'll have to come into permissions, make sure all the permissions are set correctly. The first person in the account is the admin. So that person does have access to everything automatically. You'll have to give permissions to the next person coming in if you want those permissions to duplicate. You can come over to teams and you can create a separate team. So let's just say you have the Acme Realty Phoenix team right now, or maybe you have a listing team, or however you guys have it set up. Just go and create a new team or two for you to work out of to test things. And then when you're assigning transactions, I don't know if you're going to be doing intake forms right away or not, but make sure you're assigning those intake forms to the new person so that they're not showing up in the old person's account and they're not getting confused on what's a test transaction versus a real transaction. The other thing that you can do, so in the templates, when you're creating new templates, let's just say you have a bunch of email templates right now, and maybe you're tweaking those, you can always clone those. So you can clone a current one, change the title. You can also put a category on it. Maybe you have like a working file or something like that, that you know that everything in that working file is still being worked on and it's not an actual template. Make sure that in your task templates, you're cloning what you have right now. If you're adding any triggers, you're not adding those triggers to existing things that are happening in active transactions. That, you may start a transaction. You don't want anything that you're testing or new to pop into that transaction. So you just want to clone, which is under options. You're going to clone this task template, for example, rename it, and then put it in a category where you'll know that you're just testing it or whatever. And then you can go ahead and work on those safely. So just don't edit the active things that are happening in a transaction right now, and you should be good to go. And if you need to follow up with more on that, go ahead and pop in another question. Okay. I've only used TCWorkflow. Okay, great. Well, we asked for everyone to tell us kind of where we were at in the system. They said they've only used TCWorkflow. So there are going to be some differences, Hannah, you're going to have to get used to. Overall, the system's going to save you a ton of time, a lot more integrations, a lot more. We have an API connection now, webhooks, we have smart blocks, we have all these things that can save you time, intake forms. But there are a few key differences that you're going to run into. And when you run into those, feel free to post them on our Facebook group, or feel free to ask our support team, and they can kind of tell you how to, if there's a way to do what you used to do in TCWorkflow in open to close, they'll give you that information. Anyone that is new, go ahead and sign up for the Facebook group. It's pretty active. There's a lot of conversation going on there. Just type in open to close. It should pop right up under groups. Definitely add yourself to that. Up here in the top right, just while we're here, here's your profile. Here's your organization screen. Plan and billing is here if you want to self-service yourself and upgrade or downgrade or whatever you need to do. The support center's in here, the idea lab if you have suggestions. Keyboard shortcuts, these are great for getting around the program a lot more easily. And we'll skip this one because I'm coming out with a new one of these. And then the change log. So the change log is really cool too. It's going to tell you what has updated in the system recently. So this menu, if you're not familiar with it, get familiar with it. The other thing I would say, if we got some new people in here, is familiar yourself with the global settings. There's a lot of settings in here down under defaults and up in here, but defaults is a big one, where, you know, you may see something and be like, wait a second, I changed my, file role and it changed the name of my file. Well, that's right here. Yes, I want to rename it, or you can say, no, I do not want to rename it. Just things like that are in here. So definitely check this out if you're new to the program, and familiarize yourself with global settings, as well as the things up here and the support center. A lot of good information in there. Okay. Can you tag contacts like in TCWorkflow? So forgive me, I wasn't in TCWorkflow, but you can put tags on clients here. And most of the other stuff works pretty much the same as far as contacts go. And in the views, having your tables and segments, a little bit more powerful and open and close on things we can do, but for the most part, it's fairly similar. Okay, can you add an additional user for as little as a month? Yeah, you can add a new user for as long as you want. Can a secondary user be changed to the primary user later on, assuming that, yes. So if you basically, I think what you're trying to get at is you're going to add that second user to do some testing and add templates and do all that kind of stuff. And then you're going to delete out that first user and, make that original user the main user. There's a couple of different ways to go about it. You can change the name of the original user to the secondary user, or you can just delete out let me see if you can delete out the primary user. I can't remember if you can do that or not. Oh yeah, you can't. So we may have to do something on the back end for you there. Matthew, you may want to chime in if you've handled this before, but you may just have to change the name of the original person and then change up the email. So if you're changing the email, you would come down to apps and APIs, and then come over to Google, and then you would have to, I can't remember what the word is, disconnect it, I think. And then it says reconnect. And then you would put in your new Google information there to connect the new email that would be associated with this open to close. Matthew, I don't know if you're on here, but do you have anything else to say on that one?
Well, he's maybe queuing up. I know he's had some internet issues today. I would say, okay, keep in mind your property assignment, contact assignment for all of that. You likely will need to adjust your organization and users for your team assignment. If you do have those ownership changes. Typically we have found, like Andrew's saying, renaming can be the best case scenario, but if you also need to update any billing information on file, I would encourage you guys to reach out to support. Let us know what you're trying to do, so that way we can make sure we have that back end also updated as well.
Yeah, let me show you what's going to happen if you delete someone. So let me try to delete Peter. I think he's associated with some stuff. When I type delete, and please don't do this unless you're ready to do this, but okay, so I can't do that because he's assigned to 4 projects as a team user. So the first thing I'm going to have to do is go into my teams, and I'm going to have to go to, let's just say this one, and here's Peter. He's on this, he's on this team. So what I would do is I would delete him from this team, and it's going to ask me who I want to reassign his tasks to and all the things that are associated with that transaction. So you can come down here and say, I want to reassociate it to this team and this person. And then I want to reassign properties to different team member. I want to assign them to this team and this person. So anyway, you can, it gives you some prompts, and it won't let you delete if that person is associated with current transactions. And to answer your other question, I think I touched on it, but yes, you can add a user for as like 3 seconds and then delete them if you really want to. Wouldn't make sense, but yeah, if you're just going to get in there and work for a month or so, then feel free to add and delete. Okay. Yeah, so reach out to support if you have any trouble with that, and we'll get that, we'll help you as much as we can there. Okay, we're working through the fields now. The secondary user wants to organize hers in her groups differently. No, that is a no-go. There are some of the fields that are defaulted and unable to be changed. Can she clone those without any issues affecting other things down the road? So there's a lot there to unpack. Fields are an interesting one. So under the hammer icon here, bottom left, in the little left bar there, you're going to go to the field editor. You can't have two people with different field sections because the whole system is built as a team. Okay. So if you're working as a team, it has to all be the same as far as field sections, because in the intake forms, we're saying, hey, if this field is checked yes, grab this whole field section and bring it in. To further say, bring in this field section for this person, it gets super convoluted, and we're definitely not going to go down that route. So figure out something that's a happy medium, or when you switch over users, go to the new system after that. The second part of the question, can she clone? Yeah, so some of them you can't delete because we need them for our system. The problem with using other fields, and maybe you can give me some clarity on why you would want to delete, because the only ones to delete that you can't are like address, contract status, and contract status. You can change all the interior stuff. So there's always going to be a contract status, but you may have to edit these in here, which is totally doable. The other thing is like contract client type, buyer, seller. I got Gorilla in here, dual, whatever. You can edit these. So it doesn't mean you can't edit the choices within the field. It just means you can't edit I think there's 8 fields that you can't edit. Everything else is 100% customizable. So you may want to follow up with another question on that, and we can dig into what fields you would want to clone and why, and I can give you some advice on that. Okay. Is there a way to highlight or make fields required when you're inputting a deal, not intake forms, like for the field areas? Not necessarily required, but you can. It depends on what plan you're on, Amber. So let's see here. How long does it take? Okay, so I'll get to your other question in a second. Is there a way to highlight or make fields required? No, but here, let me go back to field editor real quick. So when you're in these fields, let's say you're in contract, no, let me go down to contract. Here we go. So on buyer, I can say every time someone chooses this buyer, I want to make it a certain color. If this field is empty, so I can make it a certain color. So if this is empty, I can go ahead and make it like red or green or whatever you want to make it like kind of stand out so that you know that these are required fields. You can do this if you're on the Pro plan. So this is not the automated part of it, is not on the Grow plan. You can do it manually, but the automation piece of this color is on the Pro. So when you come over to a transaction, let me go into, let's see, go here. And over here, you can manually set these however you want. So you can set that for high. That means it's definitely a required field. You can maybe set it for medium, which is something you definitely have to get to before the end of the transaction, but it's not a high priority. And you could also do like a low there. So you do that manually. When you click in, let's go down to, oops, sorry, I was clicking on the wrong side. When you come down here, you also have those options in here, and you have the default background colors as well. So if I make this red and high, now you can see that highlighted the whole thing red. That's the background color. And then this over here is the priority. Now, the one thing I will mention about these priorities is if you do click these priorities, they're going to come into the health bar. So now if I come over to my health bar, contract client type is one of my fields that is going to make my health bar red. So you may not want to make it red. You may want to make it a different color that's not so concerning. Our motto on our team is no red before bed. That means that, you know, if that thing is red, it needs to be done today. So I don't make things red unless they're absolutely have to be done that day. But what you can do instead is you can make this background color red and then just take this off. And that way it's not going to pop up in your health bar, but it's also going to have this red, so you know you need to fill this in. Okay. Okay, let's see here. How long does it take for you to implement ideas from the Idea Lab? I see some of them that are a few years suggested, not implemented. Yeah, Amber, it just really depends. Honestly, we do surveys of the clients, and the only ones, there may be ones that sit in there for 10 years. If they're not going to be, if it's not something that the rest of the users want, right? We have thousands and thousands of users that may want something that only works for them and no one else really cares about it. It's probably not going to get implemented before a new mobile app. And trying to think of what else we're working on right now. But Anyway, things like that are going to move up the list. So it doesn't really necessarily have anything to do with the time that it's in there. It has to do with how many users it's going to affect, how much time it's going to take us to create, how much time it's going to take us to maintain. Some of the features we have to have a person on staff just to maintain that feature. So all those things come into play when we're deciding on which ones are getting implemented or not. But yeah, good suggestions that are going to affect the bulk of the users. I mean, someone brought up subtasks the other day. We had it implemented within a week. But there's other things in there that probably will never get implemented, honestly. Okay, can you show us how the Dotloop integration works? Possibly. I can show you part of it at least. I don't know if I have a live account hooked up in mine, but let's take a look. So the first thing you're going to want to do is come down to apps and APIs. And you're going to want to come down to Dotloop and you can connect Dotloop. I do have an account connected, so let's see if it works. And then you're going to come over to so there's a couple different ways to do this. I'll give you all three. So, wrong screen, sorry. Okay, so under the new, you can import a loop here. You can also import a loop here. Or you can do the intake form first and do the loop after the transaction is created. So that's the way I prefer to do it. I prefer to connect the loop after the transaction is created, but depending on your workflow, we can discuss that and figure out what's best for you. So if you do import the loop here, it's going to ask you what account. You can have as many accounts, I think, as you want in here. I haven't seen a limit. So you can put all your accounts in there and then you can select the loop and then you can apply a field map template. So all this field map template is, and you can look in the support center for detailed on how to set these up, but basically it's just telling it this field over in .loop equals this field over in open to close. They may be named different, right? Because a lot of our systems that we work with, they don't let you have 100% customizable fields. So we have to say closing in SkySlope is close date in open to close and make sure that that information gets pushed to the right field. So you don't want to have to do that every single time for 50 fields. And so what we do is we create this field mapping template and do it one time, save it, and then we just apply it. So the .loop mapping template, I would apply that. And now the fields are going to be matched up with open to close automatically. You could hit next. I don't know how far I can go with this without, okay. So then it's just going to take you through the stages here. Which team do you want to assign to this transaction? Contacts, documents, property templates, settings, blah, blah, blah. So that's the way I don't recommend to do it. Only because our intake forms are so powerful. Our intake forms are going to let you say, is there septic? Is there well? Is there solar? Is there this? Is there that? You know, all these, is there referral? Is there appraisal on this? Is there whatever? And have it automate everything you need for the transaction. So by filling out our intake forms, you can have it say, if referral is yes, I need my referral fields to come in. I need my referral documents to be required for compliance. I need my referral tasks to be put in my task list so that I know that I got everything done. You don't want to have to do that manually every time. So the intake forms are a lot powerful, or a lot more powerful. So I would use the intake forms on that. And then what I would do is come into the transaction afterwards, go to more and go to .loop. And then you can link this property here. You can also export this property over to .loop. If you want to create a loop from the property in open to close, you can do that as well. But here you can link it. You can say, I'm going to choose this profile. And then I'm going to choose this. I'm going to assign this to it. And now I've connected this property to that loop. And now I can, let's see here, import details from .loop. And here you go. If you have your field mapping template on, you can see all this stuff comes in, or at least these ones do. I didn't set this one, obviously. And then you can import your details. You can import your contacts. It's going over to .loop. So the time that it's taken there is it's going to .loop, grabbing the information, and then displaying it in open to close. And then you can bring over documents as well. And this is what most people do, is the contacts and documents. There are no documents in that loop, unfortunately, but they would be listed here, and then you can put them in whatever folder you want over in open to close. So hopefully that answers your question. Can you please go over the flow of the intake forms for a brand new listing? Do you start with a pre-listing intake and then go to a seller contract? Yeah. So, let's see here. Once the property, okay, so your two questions. Once the property has an accepted offer. Yeah. So what I like to do, and you can do it however you want. There's a couple different ways. And I think we went over this last week too. So check that video too. A couple different ways you can do it. Let's just pretend that this is the listing that I have in here right now. And you can change the name to, if you want to listing. You can put listing up front there if it makes you happy. What I like to do is probably color code it. I think that's a better way to do it. Do all your listings in green and all your, or maybe your listings in blue and your closings in green, since the closings equal money. But anyway, you can color code these so you know that if it's green, it's my listing. If it's blue, it's my, or whatever I just said. So in here now, there's a couple different ways you can do this. You can either bring in an intake form for the pre-list, like you said, and then have the listing be its own transaction over here. So in the property screen, you would have this for a listing. You would have the exact same address for the contract to close once it comes in. This gives me the ability to fill out two intake forms, which I think is more important than what I'll show you next. On the listing, you can bring in an intake form for the listing, get all that information, start working on it. Once it goes under contract, the agent now has the ability to fill out another intake form and create a contract to close of that same address. Now, if you need a bunch of information from the listing, there are a couple different ways you can do this. You can, here, let me go back to the transaction real quick. You can duplicate this. So you can come down here and duplicate. And then once you duplicate this listing transaction, you can, well, it depends on what plan you're on. So let me specify that first. So if you're on the Grower Pro plan, you're not going to have this option. Okay. You can duplicate it and then just fill in by hand this stuff. I think that's a horrible idea just because you're going back to manual, and that's, you know, not what we want. We want automated. And that's why I split them up. But if you are on the scale plan, which is our biggest plan, you have this menu here, which is triggers. And this trigger menu can kind of act like an intake form. You can have a bunch of triggers in here that mimic your intake form. So what you could do is you could duplicate the listing, turn it into a transaction, leave that listing back there, okay? Because just in case this cancels, you want to have a pristine version of that listing so that, you know, if you delete out that listing and just have the contract to close and it cancels, it's going to be really hard to get the information out from the new, you know, from the contract to close portion and have it look like the original listing. So when you duplicate it, if you do go this route, make sure you keep that listing in like an archive folder just in case this contract to close cancels. So once you duplicate it, then you can come over to the trigger menu and you can have all your triggers. If septic is yes, add in my septic fields, add in my septic tasks, add in my septic documents. If solar is yes, add in whatever. If appraisal is yes, make sure you add my appraisal fields and all my appraisal tasks. So you can do it through the trigger menu on the backside if you have the scale plan. But most people are on the Pro or Grow. So I would just advise having one intake form for the listing, one intake form for the contract to close. If the contract to close cancels, you just change the status to canceled, and then you go right back to the listing. And instead of pending, you just turn it right back to active. All right. And you could come up with something too, like on here, just so it doesn't affect your reporting. You could create different contract statuses that you put them in so that they don't count towards certain things in your reporting tab. If you're doing a lot of reporting on contract statuses, you may want to have those ones show up differently so that you don't have two transactions, the listing and the contract to close, counting towards one actual transaction. So that gets a little bit more advanced, so we can go over that at another time if you guys have questions on there. Can you add 2 API calendars in there? I have an agent who wants his stuff added to the calendar, not mine. So calendar, yes. Email, no. So let me show you. And you would have to do it a different way. So here, let me go to properties real quick. You can have a lot of API calendars in there, which is kind of cool. So if I go to a date here, you can see all the calendars in here. So what you would probably want to do is you would probably want to come to your contacts and you would enter your agent in here, and then you would include that agent on all of the calendar invites here. Now, all of these calendar invites are going to be everything that you've marked in purple on the date. So you can see the final walkthrough is not marked, so that's not going to show up on the calendar, but the appraisal contingency is. So make sure that you have these correct. So you don't want to send them all these dates if it doesn't even apply to them. Keep the ones gray that are just for you, and then you can do the purple ones for any clients. But when you click on these, you can see that you have also different calendars in here that you can sync up. And then you also have all of your contacts here that you can send those invites to as well.
And I'm going to piggyback on that because this question has come up a bit in implementation, if that's okay.
Yeah.
The API calendar dropdown that you just saw, that is done through adding your API connection in the backend. So that's kind of your internal calendar. When you're sharing these calendar invites with your contacts, what it's doing is it's adding that email address that's associated with this contact to the invite outside of any API connection. So just kind of keep in mind the two differences there of how it's being shared with your contacts. You don't have to add their account to your account to be able to share it with them.
Yeah, the other thing I would say is, you know, the way I was using this, and I don't think my team uses it this way anymore, but I had like a buyer critical dates calendar, a seller critical dates calendar. So I had some different calendars that I was sending different information to. And so that's why you may want to have more than one API calendar listed up here. So if your team has, you know, time off calendar, you know, all these different calendars, then you have some options here as far as where you're sending them. Okay. What are the file buttons used for? I'm assuming, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm assuming you're talking about these. So there's a lot of different uses for them, and your team can come up with whatever they want. Let's just say you're using SkySlope, right? And I want to know that this document was uploaded to SkySlope. I want to know when it's approved in SkySlope. I want to know, you know, all these different things. Come over here to file buttons, and I can say approved SkySlope. Well, that's not a good, that is not a good. Okay, approved in SkySlope. All right, there we go. Approved in SkySlope. And then I can add that button. And then I could say, what did I say? Submitted to SkySlope. To SkySlope. Add that button. Now you can see these buttons are here, and they also just showed up over here. So now your team can say, hey, submit it, and you can move these around too so that they're in the right order. I'm going to submit before it's approved. So let me push that up there. And so when it's submitted, they may come in here and say green, that it's submitted. And then once it's approved, they can make it green or whatever you guys want. Maybe missing initials. Maybe you've contacted the agent. Maybe purple for you means contacted the agent. Gray means nothing. Red means you haven't had a response in a long time or whatever. You can customize these colors however you want. You can also say, when I toggle this over, I want all of these to turn green. And when I toggle this off, I want them all to turn red. So now instead of having to do individuals, like let's just say this is totally approved or not approved, you can say, boom, they all turn red, push it over, and now they all turn green. And then EX is excluded. So this will be excluded from the agent client's view. M is missing. So if you don't have a file in here, it'll turn red and give you a count up here on this little document 0. If I make one missing, you can see that turned to 1. This is the priority. If you want to take care of something before the end of the day and you don't want to forget, you can make that a red priority. And now this document shows up in here under documents. You see it here. And then this is your notes. If you want to put notes on a file, put some notes on a file, say add. And then you can exclude those notes as well. You can also pop this out. So let me just pop this toggle notes, and you can leave these notes exposed. So leave this note exposed, and then I can update that one or save it as a new note. And now you can leave those open if you want. So you can do this in your templates too. You don't have to do it here. You do it over in your templates. When these templates come over, then you have like this pulled out already. Like in California, they have a lot of disclosure. Sometimes they want to put notes in there originally before it actually even a document comes in. So you could do that. You could preset notes that are going to come in to remind you to do whatever you need to do. Okay, I'm a FUB user. How would I go about pushing tasks from OTC into FUB, or can I set something up to apply action plans and FUB to populate once we update something? So no, we're working on this right now. Let me show you in tasks. Right now, it's a little cumbersome. So right now, because we didn't really want agents involved at the beginning. So it's here. You can assign a task in follow-up boss. You can choose which API. I have two APIs connected right now. This is my TC. This is my agent. So I'm just going to grab my TC's API, and then I can grab a user. This is a follow-up boss user. And then I can grab a contact that I want this task to show up in. And then it gives me the regular task stuff, just like follow-up boss has. So here's my task name. This is a follow-up, or this is a call, or this is all coming from follow-up boss. All of this is coming from follow-up boss. So follow-up, date, time, reminder, submit. That's going to appear over in the tasks, in the actual task section. Now, what we're working on is the ability to have it in the task section. And well, let me back up. The ability to toggle this and say, I want this to be an agent task. And that agent task will actually appear without having to go through this process over in follow-up boss, or having it show up in the widget. So having the widget in follow-up boss, I'm not going to go over there, but in the widget in follow-up boss, if you go to tasks, have a checkbox next to that task so that you can go in and just check it off there. We don't want the agents checking off anything. We know that agents typically, not everyone, if you're an agent on this call, you may be super detailed, but most of them aren't. And so we don't want agents checking off a task that could set off automation and open to close. So what we'll probably have to do is when they check off that task, have a notification pop up and say, you know, agent 1 checked off task number 60. Are you okay with this? Yes, boom. And now the automation can set off any triggers set off on that, because we don't want an agent sending 50 things to your health bar when they shouldn't have been, because it was a mistake. And so stay tuned for that. In the next, we're working on the mobile app right now. So not only will follow-up boss have that option, but the mobile app will have that option as well for your agents, so that you can start assigning them some tasks here and there and get reports on when they're done. And we're trying to make it a little bit more collaborative. So, okay. I've been trying to split several files and it's not allowing me to. Can you show me on your end how to do it? Yeah, sure. So, oh shoot. Of course, I just filed a bunch of, okay, let me think about this for a second, how I can do this. Let me grab a document from somewhere else. So, okay, cool. So the one thing you need to watch out for is if those documents are coming from DocuSign, Authentisign, which some of the other ones too. Check your signing program and make sure the output on the signing program is not protected. The way you can tell is if you open the document up in a PDF viewer, it will not let you have certain editing rights on that document. And so for a while there, all of my documents coming out of DocuSign are protected. And what I had to do is I had to print to a PDF and unsecure those documents. So basically I had to create another document out of the first document to get them to split. So if you're having trouble splitting and it's saying it just can't do it and it's giving you an error message, 9 times out of 10, it's because whatever program you're getting that from, or the agent that you're getting that from, has it from some type of protected document. But in this case, let's go ahead and hit this one. I'm not sure. Let's see here. Go back. What did I do here? Let me make sure that's not popping up on some other screen. Oh, I just locked up my system. Okay, hold on. I'm going to have to relog in here. Jana, have you had any issues or had any tickets on splitting lately?
I believe that is the issue that we've gotten on some locked documents. When I run into that, I normally do a quick refresh, take a look at how I'm splitting out. If you guys see that particular screen, reach out in support so that way we can dig into it further. But I do believe that is something that we're digging into right now.
Okay, yeah, that'll be good. Yeah, I'm just logging back in because I locked up my screen somehow. Let me get on here. And let me find a file that I have multiple pages on that we can try to split. Oh, you know what? I'm on the stage server. I don't know if I can do it from here. Let me see who had that question. Amber, I'm going to send you a video. I got to get on the other server to be able to do this. I'll send you a video of splitting documents and what you may run into. I'll go ahead and post that up somewhere, maybe in the Facebook group or something. So if anyone else is having that issue, then we can get that all sorted out. All right, so let me share my screen again. There we go. Okay, sorry about that, but I'll send you a video or we'll post it up and get that answered. I just lost the internet for your whole response. I'll re-listen to the recording. Okay. Yeah. They usually split these up too. So you'll be able to just fast forward to the part that you need to. Piggybacking on the last question, can you make phone number and email required when the agent put in contact? No, not right now. But we are going to do a revamp probably of contacts. I don't know how soon, but we've been talking about it internally. There's just been certain things coming up where we need access to. We don't really want to be a full CRM and have all CRM capabilities, but there are certain things like that that are coming up that people would like access to. So we did add tags in. We did add some of these little connection points and automatically adding people to client portal, linking a follow-up boss contact, like these things. And slowly it's kind of migrating into the need for intake forms to be able to, like you said, require email and probably email and phone number, the two big requests we get. So not currently, it's all or nothing. It's like, hey, hopefully they fill it in. And if they don't, why aren't they filling it in? But if it's a team concept, you have a little bit more control. If you're an independent TC and you're just at the mercy of 50 different agents from 50 different brokerages, I can see how that could be a pain in the butt.
Yeah, and let me, if it's okay to piggyback on that too a little bit. If you're using the intake forms, another really powerful benefit of those is having your contacts uploaded through the intake form. And when you're going through the approval process, the system will actually flag those contacts that are missing email addresses. And you'll have to actually go and update the email address for that connected contact to move forward with the approval process. So that is pretty beneficial. We actually had a very similar question come up in implementation this week on that screen you're just on, Andrew, with contacts.
Oh.
Oftentimes when I get a new contact from an intake form, I want to go back to the original contact record versus just updating it from that property screen, because there are so many additional details I may want to add in, like my tags, my connections, my portal access, lead source. That way I have a very robust record and I'm following those best practices with contact database management as well. So I just want to add that and I'll get it.
Cool. I'm building out property triggers, but I am not able to get my conditions to work when using them. File role is missing condition. I've hard coded my file roles to my document templates, so I don't have to add those to every property manually, but that's causing issues. Is there a best way for me to have the trigger queue up when the document is received and a different trigger queue up if the document has not been received using the file role conditions? I've heard several strategies on this, but let's see how you approach it. Yeah. So tell me in the comments if you have changed the global setting, because this is usually the culprit. Right here. So should trigger file role conditions be processed? Oh, wait a second. Let me reread your question for a second. You're building out property triggers. Yeah, this should have the same effect. Let me see. No, this shouldn't have the same effect.
I just want to jump on to that a little bit because I've heard this come up in the support side a little bit. It's kind of the situation where there's a file role being applied and the condition says if the file role is missing, or if it exists, either one, then do something. The problem is that it's being based off of the file role, not the existence of a file. So this property or this global setting here isn't going to actually affect that. This is more for the case of the
task
file itself. So we found some very interesting scenarios. One of the ways we've approached it was to, and you can maybe have a better solution here, was apply your date template, have everything sorted out the way you need to, but don't apply the file role until you actually have the document in place.
Yeah. So yeah, this one, we almost need
Global setting is turned on, by the way, for this one.
What's that?
So they do have it set to no file role must or file must exist to process conditions. But
Yeah, I'll show you where this is in a second. And I think what we need to do probably is have a secondary organizational setting here for, she's talking about property triggers versus task triggers. So if you're presetting those in the property triggers, we don't have a setting for that. So you have to manually set that file role when you receive the, when I receive the document, I set the file role that triggers the trigger, to fly off and go to my, either automatically send out or go to my health bar. And so we may need to consider another global setting if people want to use it that way, to say, you can preset the file roles even in task triggers, or I'm sorry, even in property triggers, but the file has to exist. So what we're talking about is over in the properties under documents. Let's see here. Let me go back to my one that I've been using. And let's go to documents. Okay, so in here, this little paperclip means that there's a file in there. Okay, any number here means additional files plus the paperclip. So the paperclip's the main file, that's one. And then we have 3 additional files in here that sit behind it. So if I go in here, you can see that I have a main file, that's the paperclip. And then I have 3 additional files in here as well. And they may be iterations of that original document or however you use it. So what it's looking at is, a lot of people like to preset their file roles. So let's just say this is preset, but there's no file in here. We don't want this trigger to fly off because there's no file in here in this main file. So what we did for tasks is we set that global setting that said it has to look and see if this paperclip exists or is purple. Even though this is set, even though the file role is set, it still needs to look over here and make sure this is purple before it sets off that trigger. For property triggers, I don't think we ever did that. I don't think we have a setting for in here, if you've preset your file role, to be able to handle that. So I'll talk to the dev team, definitely put it in the idea lab. And then I'll get with Matthew too, because he's seen a lot of these tickets come in, and we'll try to figure out what's going on there and give you kind of a best case solution for that. All right. And if you want to, you're anonymous right now, so we don't know who to reach out to. So if you want to put your name in.
this was a question from support that we're just trying to get follow up on.
Oh, okay, cool. Okay, awesome. Is there a link for the intake forms that I could put on my website? That's where my clients go to order my service. Nope. So one thing we do is really important to us is the security of these. And I know a lot of other form programs let you just take a link and post it up on your website, but it's not very secure to do that. People can spam you. Not saying that they would pick a TC and, wherever you're at to spam or create havoc with, but they could. And they could find open to close and say, hey, let's spam all their users or whatever. So we have to have you log in. Your agents have to log in. They have to go to the intake forms and they have to fill one out there just for security purposes. Will it always be that way? Probably, but I can't say. It depends. If there's something that we can do to kind of safeguard that spamming activity, we will. So yeah, so that's the short answer to that. If I don't want the calendar invite sent to me, is that doable? Just send to agents or whoever. Let's see here. Okay, so Matthew, do you know if you can turn off the actual person?
No, you have to use the API connection because the event has to be created. The way the rest of the invites work with all those other available contacts, it's kind of like if you go to your Google Calendar and you're creating an event there, and then you need to invite a couple of people. It's a very similar process. That's pretty much what the system is doing. So it does have to create the event somewhere. It has to live somewhere, and then you could invite other people. So there wouldn't be a way to say only invite my agent, because there would be no event to invite him to.
You could possibly have like a secondary API calendar that's like a junk calendar or something that everything goes to. And then you could get in your settings for Google and probably turn off the notifications for that calendar. So there may be a workaround for it. I'd have to think through that a little bit, but okay, that's at least that answers the short answer at hand.
I just want to piggyback a little bit on here since you're looking at the screen here. There is a start time and end time. A lot of people kind of just skip over that. Again, with the whole idea that this is an event being created on the calendar, sometimes it might be a good idea to throw in a time. Otherwise, it's just considered an all-day event because you didn't give it a time. So it just thinks, I don't know, this day is when this is happening. And if you're maybe inviting like agents, that could, kind of confuse them sometimes where they're like, wait, what's going on with this event? Why is it all day? It's because the time wasn't set. So just to throw that out there too.
Okay, Aaron asks about the SkySlope integration. I'm not familiar with any issues, so I'd have to get with Matthew on that afterwards and the dev team and see what's going on there and any ETAs. I don't know of any ETAs on that. I'm on the beta for property triggers. When do we have to switch to the new pricing plan? Is there a date set for when that's going to be unavailable? I read on Facebook that it was January 16th. Yeah, you got lucky because I got busy. And so I've been slowly moving people off of that plan. So you should have been prepared by January 16th. So if you still want them to be in effect and us not to disconnect those, you need to contact us right away and switch over to the new plan before that happens. Otherwise, you may have a day or two when you don't have those available. As soon as I turn that beta off, you're not even going to be able to see that menu. So January 16th was the date that you need to be prepared by. We will slowly be taking people off that. If you want to get ahead of the game and not have any downtime, you need to switch plans ASAP. So that's it. We got 13 minutes. I'll stick around for another 3 to 5 minutes and see if anything else pops up here. But if you have any other questions, go ahead and pop them in the Q&A. Appreciate everyone being here. We had a nice crowd today. Next week, same time, same place. Next week, let's see, what's the date next week? Next week would be the 8th. Yeah, we're good on the 8th. Okay. So yep, same time, same place next week.
With this extra time, can we go through the commission template updates and just some quick strategies there? We were going to cover that last call, but we didn't have enough time.
Yeah.
I think biggest one is just value syncing back if you have multiple templates applied.
Yeah, so I'm in a transaction right now, but you can definitely set these up in the templates, and that's where you should set them up. I'm just going to show you this because this is one that I kind of built out a little bit more fully than any of the templates that are in there. Okay, so widgets. Well, first of all, you can put a logo up here. Widgets, you can choose things to display. So in this case, maybe I want to display Bob Barker's name as the buyer. I want to have the closing date on here. I may want to have the acceptance date. I don't know what you guys require, but you can put whatever you want on here. And you may have different templates for different purposes. One for your bookkeeper, one for your escrow officer, and one for your team or something like that. Now, it's going to grab that purchase price. So in your template, this, I think it says 100,000, I think is the default. But once you're in a property, it'll go and it'll grab that purchase price and put it in here. You can come into GCI. So these are not hard coded. Like you can type whatever you want in here. Okay. So you can type in, Bob's commission or whatever you want. And then you can say, I want this to be a percentage of the total purchase amount. I can copy a value from a field, or I can make it a flat amount. So if you're going to grab this from a field, it's going to ask you what field to choose from. And so you would have to have these filled out originally so that it can pull from that field and pull that amount into here. But I'm going to go ahead and just make it a percentage for now. Okay, so step calculation and step total, these are things that are going to display on the final report or CDA if you go to print it or make it a PDF. Do you want certain things to show up? Do you want the percentage to show up here? Do you want the total amount to show up? Do you want, so whatever you want to show up, you can kind of specify what you want to show up on the final report. So in here, if I want to say add, let's just say I have this GCI calculated and I want to add a split to it. I can come down here and add a split. You can add a split and copy from a field, add or subtract a percentage. I don't use these too much. The reason is because if you want to further split, if you want to keep splitting this, these splits are the best to use, and then just turn off the ability to see them. So like, let's just say I have a 30% split for Zillow. Well, I calculate the remainder 70% as well. That remainder 70% can be used in certain aspects. So I'm not going to go too deep into this. This is kind of just a basics. But if you get into situations where you're like, wait a second, I can't do what I need to, think about making it a split so that you can further split the split. You can literally split the split 20 times before it's going to tell you can't split anymore. So you have a lot of flexibility in this to create super custom calculations off of the commission. And then if you don't want certain things to show up, just don't check any of this stuff and it won't show up on the final report. So if this was a remainder, let's just say this was a remainder amount, and then a remainder percentage, and then I added a split here. I don't have to check these and it won't even show up on the next sheet. This is just for my calculation so I can further split that 70% down. Okay. These little dotted lines are going to be the, how do I want to say this, the levels of the split. So the GCI is the total. So you can see there's nothing on the GCI level, right? Because that's the main amount. Now I'm going to split it into a broker split of 10%. And you can see this line is right in line with the team split of 90. So there's the 100%. There shouldn't be anything else on this line, which there isn't. And then I'm going to further split this team split. Now this team split is going to get interesting because now I'm going to pay an agent 35%. I'm going to pay an ISA 10%. I'm going to pay a showing agent 5%, and I'm going to pay another agent. Or maybe this is like the, let's see. Let's make this makes more sense to make this like the team leader. Let's see here. There we go. Team leader. Okay, so update. Okay, so there you go. So team leader is getting 50%, agent's getting 35, ISA is getting 10, showing agent is getting 5. All of those are in the same line. And then maybe the team leader also donates 1% of the commission to his favorite cause, and maybe he pays for the transaction fee. And let's see here. I might click on that. I don't want to offend anyone. Let's make that 475. There we go. All right. So your transaction coordinator is getting 475. You're getting a donation out, and you can see these are in the same line because they're coming from this 50%. So you can see how that one was done. You can get super complicated. We have teams that are very, very complicated. The only thing that we do not have in this is the caps. We don't have caps yet. So you're going to have to figure out caps some other way for the meantime until we can figure out a way to add those into the program. But yeah, it works really good, and you kind of use your imagination. All these are not, like I said, they're not hard coded. So you can type in whatever you want. So you can get super custom with the way that you set these up.
I'm gonna, if it's all right, chime in with a couple of things that we've seen so far as users have been building these out. One, again, it's very customizable, so you can do a lot more with this. I know TCWorkflow users are used to a slightly different commission calculator tool, but this is gonna take that to the next level and then some. I think the most common thing that we've seen so far with this is your split totals not equaling 100%. You really want to make sure that as you have those levels, you're accounting for every part of that commission breakdown amount. So 100% is what you're looking for all of those splits. And then can we touch on the value syncing back to fields and how that should only be used in one report?
Yeah, if you click on this right here, you're able to say, I want this 50% to go back to this field. So here are all the fields that 50% can go back to. I'll choose, that's not the one, but there's a commission one down here somewhere that, whatever. Oh, that's flat fee, but whatever, you get the point. So you pick your field, this 50% will go back there. Now this is a cool part. Now you can sync this total here to a user, and that user may be an agent. So now you can report on how much that agent has received for the year. So you can do agents or team members. So maybe there's a team member that gets a referral fee for referring stuff to the agent. You can include them as well. And now I can go over in my reporting and say, show me all of the transaction fees that have been paid to, Jane, or show me all the transaction fees that have been paid to Mike. And so now you have that ability so that not only can you sync that back to the field here for each of these split totals, but you can come over to reporting. And instead of this being a field that you're reporting on, like closing date or client type or something like that, you can actually report on the commission. And then you can report on these people in the commission as well. Now, one thing I will show you on reporting and commissions is we have a lot of ways to get this out of our program into a reporting program or into Google Drive or into Microsoft Excel. You can come over here and get a list JSON, which if you don't know what a JSON file is, just an easy way to take the data and put it into a different system. Any developer will know what a JSON is. You also have this list button. And this is a bad example because I don't have anything here, but here, list. Now it's going to list all the properties that were calculated here too. And so you can see all of the properties that were calculated. 3 properties. You can actually go into the properties. You can look at the documents. You can do whatever you want from here. So it's going to give you a list of all the stuff it took to calculate this 92 million inactive properties. Cool thing is you can take this list JSON and now you can push it over to a different program as well. And now you can have a list of all the things that were calculated in here. Now, going over to commissions again. Sorry, let me go to same example we had before. Go here. Okay, so in here, if you come down to the bottom, and maybe you don't want to use our CDA that it does for you. Here, let me open that up. You can take out all this stuff. Those are all those little boxes. You can take out any of this stuff so it looks a little cleaner. Here are our widgets here. But if you don't want to use this and you want to use some other program, you can actually take this feed right out of open to close and use this feed to put it into another program, and that's maybe better suited for how you're doing commissions. So if you're using like Broker Sumo or I don't know, Brokerman or something like that, and you wanted to have all this commission data go to one of those programs for further reporting, you can definitely do that. We have one of our users right now taking that data and pushing it into QuickBooks so that they can have all of their line items from the properties come out, and then all of the commissions and everything come out as well. So there's a lot of different use cases for this if you get creative. Anything else you want to touch on, Jana?
Yeah, one last thing with that, if you can actually just click on the commissions tab again to show the multiple reports. We have had some users that create a report type so they can do a shortened CDA PDF that they could send to their title company versus an internal one that they can have a deeper breakdown. If you guys are using those field values to sync back your data, try and do that in just one template. Have one template control your value syncing, because if that value or that field that we select there is used in multiple reports, the system is going to override and say, hey, this new report that I added in this template is using this field, so I'm going to overwrite that and now have this report be put in that place. And so we don't want you guys to lose any data if the system is going to say use this instead of that. So just make sure that you only have the value syncing in your master report type. Keep those additional reports just for the CDA breakdown if you can.
Most people, I think, will probably just use one CDA, but we do have some bigger teams that are using multiple CDAs for different purposes, and that's when it gets sticky because now they have the same field syncing back, and it's, they're like, wait, this is disappearing. It's because it's overwriting from the other template. So on the base plan, I think you only get 1. On the second plan, I think you get 3. And then on the scale plan, I think you get unlimited. So use your imagination. I mean, for me, having one, I always do something with my bookkeeper. And so having this so that I can automatically print this out and just, have that PDF automatically get put into the transaction and then automatically emailed off to my bookkeeper every single time is a huge win for me. I also like team data, but that might be different from what I'm sending to the escrow officer to get payment. So, and you can handle a lot of that through reporting as well. But yeah, if you guys have use cases that are a little bit more sophisticated for reporting and commissions, feel free to reach out. It's brand new. It's a brand new feature. So we're working through a lot of the kinks of it right now. So if you see something funny, don't hesitate to reach out and we'll see if it's a known issue or if it's something that we need to address. Cool. Well, it's 1 o'clock. We'll go ahead and wrap this up. Hope everyone got something good out of this. I appreciate everyone being here and I appreciate all the questions. We will see you next week at noon Mountain Time. Talk to you then. Bye.